David HaMelech says, Shir HaMa'alot LeDavid, Samachti Ba'omerim Li Bet Adonai Nered. A song of ascent to David. I was overjoyed when they told me we'll go up to the house of Hashem. The last I was with Rabbi Nissim, we were on Har HaBayit together, on the Temple Mount. We prayed together there with my dear friend Rabbi Moshe Ben Zaken. We prayed. Amidah, Birkat Kohanim, Shacharit. We prayed Shacharit at Har HaBayit. They're going to arrest me for that in Israel next time I come. There's a minyan and everything, so I don't think. Thank you so much. Okay. And now the next pasuk says, Omedot hayu ragleinu b'sha'arayich Yerushalayim. Our feet used to stand in your gates, Yerushalayim. So my blessing to all of us is that next time we see each other, it should be together with Rabbi Nissim in Yerushalayim. And I want to thank really the Temple Moses, Rabbi Hadar, Rabbi Nissim, and all of you who arranged, especially to Joshua, to Ohad, to Rabbi Yitzchak, to Verdugo. Am I forgetting somebody? All of you for making this happen. In reality, it really happened within 24 hours. It was me'et le'et, immediately overnight. And Baruch Hashem, Rabbi Nissim, planning ahead is not always a good idea. Take responsible life advice from me. They tell a story about a rabbi who once came to speak in his Beit HaKnesset. He got up to give the derasha, and this rabbi, every single Shabbat, no matter where he was, no matter which week it was, which parasha, how many double parashiot, which holiday, always he got up to speak. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. I need to make a shechianu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shechianu v'kimanu v'gianu lezeman hazeh. You see Esther in the back. In 2015, when I was thrown out of my old Beit HaKnesset and we started a new one in my living room, it was Esther who was there to start the Beit HaKnesset with me. She's long since left us and moved to Florida, so I have to come all the way here to say thank you. But please join us in rush hour, right? Oh Hashem. So this rabbi is to come to the Beit HaKnesset every single Shabbat and speak for 18 minutes. This Shabbat he got up and he spoke. After an hour and a half he gets down, they say like you, and he gets down, they say, Rabbi, come on. You've been speaking here for 30 years, every Shabbat, 18 minutes, what's going on with you? So let me tell you, I'm a busy guy. I'm traveling here, I'm traveling there, bar mitzvah, beritot, weddings, funerals, all of these things. I don't really get a chance to prepare my sermons. So the only private time I have for myself is when I'm walking from the front door of my house to the front door of the Beit HaKnesset. That's my private time I prepare my sermon. And from the front door of my house to the front door of the Beit HaKnesset, it takes me exactly 18 minutes to walk. That's why every Shabbat I have an 18-minute derasha. But this week, what can I do? I was walking and there was some construction. They made a detour, so I had to go all the way around the neighborhood, cross the bridge. I got an hour and a half later. That's my derasha. So when people come to a class, there's always two kinds of people: those who want to know when the class can be over, and those who lie that they don't care when the class can be over. I just got off a 5.5-hour flight from San Diego, California. So usually I would reserve myself 5.5 hours right now. But being that I have another flight to catch back to San Diego at 9:15 from MIA, I have to be out of here by 7:15. We made a fence for the 7:15. So B'ezrat Hashem, I can guarantee you that you will be out because I have to be out B'ezrat Hashem by then. But it will not be the last time that I will be here learning with you. B'ezrat Hashem. I've been thinking in the last 24 hours what it is that I could teach here, what we can learn together tonight. And so this is something that comes from my heart. Many of you I know. And the many of you that I don't know, you seem to also know me. And so I'm hoping that after tonight we'll know each other. But I feel like I'm speaking inside of my Beit HaKnesset. I'm not a guest speaker in another Beit HaKnesset. I'm not worried about what other people are going to say. Worst case, this video never makes it anywhere. I want to speak to you from my heart. As a rabbi who's been involved in Jewish education for a long time, I may not be so old, but for a long time, I found that all of the shiurim, all of the classes, all of the lectures, everything that we give, and you mentioned we have many colleagues that teach, Rabbi Yitzchak, Verdugo, who you are lucky to live in a city that has Rabbi Yitzchak inside of it. All of the shiurim that we teach are all here to uncover a certain message, but sometimes we forget to connect the dots. Sometimes between all of these pieces, it feels very fragmented. So what are we actually getting at? What is this Judaism that we talk about? What is it really? What is the purpose of it? Where are we going with it? And in the absence of a coherent mission statement, sometimes it just feels like fragmented learning. We learn a Shiur here, we learn a Teshuvah there, we learn some halachot for Pesach when it comes to this, but what is that which unites all of it? And I think that tonight's Shiur is something I want to share from the heart. I call it the Jewish art of war. And I say the Jewish art of war because I am a firm believer. The Judaism of our Chachamim, when I say our Chachamim, I intend the Chachamim of Sepharad, do not belong only to Sephardic Jews. Just like you and I live in a reality that someone can be born in Morocco and end up in Lubavitch, or born in Yemen and end up in Uman, you could also be born in Russia or Poland and end up in Sepharad. Sephardic Judaism is not an ethnicity. And to limit it to that is a crime. Sephardic Judaism is a coherent philosophy that if you would ask the rabbis who developed it, never knew that they were developing it only for Sephardic people. They viewed themselves as leaders of the whole Jewish world. And as such, it is relevant to the whole Jewish world. And anything that I say in the word Sephardic tonight does not come to exclude, but to include. It's very important for me to make that clear. And with that in mind, let's study. Has anyone here heard of Sun Tzu? Yeah, Sun Tzu, tell me.
Art of War.
The Art of War. Okay, so the Shiur was named after him. Tell me something about him.
One of the best strategies I ever read of him was about, well, he was a general in China from the Han Dynasty, something like this. And then the number one quote that I love myself was that when you have an enemy, you always give them a path to escape. He says, because if you give them a path where you cut them off completely, then they have the power of desperation. So when you give them a chance that they can be indecisive, that's when you can really attack them.
It's a halakha, no? It's a halakha, right? Rambam, laws of war. We surround the city only on 3 directions. We always leave the 4th direction open for anyone who wishes to retreat. It's a halakha. Sun Tzu.
But not for that reason. We say it because of mercy, right? We say it for mercy.
Of course.
He's saying it for succeeding reasons.
So So the Torah told us one reason, and we have more reasons. Wonderful. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. Here you have a man whose historicity I can't verify. I can't tell you when exactly Sun Tzu lived. Did he really live? Is he a fabricated figure? Historians fight over it. Doesn't matter. There's a book. Sun Tzu's Art of War is a highly recommended book. In the West, politicians like to use the book of Sun Tzu, but in other places, it's a book of military strategy. Why am I starting a shiur with military strategy? Because it's exactly what we're here to talk about. Listen to the words of Sun Tzu, page 1 in the source sheet. If you don't have a source sheet, you can go to your phone, shiviti.org/Miami, and you will find a PDF there where you can download it to your phone and look at it. I won't think you're playing Minesweeper or what. I know you're learning Torah. In chapter 3, Sun Tzu says, in the practical art of the war, the best thing of all is to take the enemy's country whole and intact. To shatter and destroy it is not so good. So too it is better to recapture an army entire than to destroy it, to capture a regiment, a detachment, or a company entire than to destroy them. Hence to fight and conquer in all your battles is not supreme excellence. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. So to win a war is already second best. The best way to win a war is by not fighting at all in the first place. Sun Tzu was quite a brutal man. When the emperor appointed him to be the general, he said, I'll be the general, but you have to let me try a military exercise. And he took 180 of the emperor's concubines. It's a lot of concubines, by the way. He said, tell me from these women, who is your favorite? He said, these two. He said, great, they're now my generals. And he said, ladies, move right. And they started giggling at him. Oh, they're soldiers, they're concubines. He said, when a general gives a command, and the soldier doesn't understand it, it's the general's fault. When I say move right, it means you move right. When I say move left, it means you move left. You understand? Good. Move left. And they giggled again. He said, when a general says something, and he explains it, and the soldier understands it but doesn't obey, that's the death penalty. And in front of the emperor, he executed his 2 wives. And he started screaming, crazy, those are my wives. He says, in war, we don't listen to the king. You already appointed me as supreme leader of this army, you don't have any right to interfere. I'm not telling you this is the kind of guy you want to hang out with for Shabbat dinner, okay? But Sun Tzu knew a thing or two about war. Therefore, number 6, the skillful leader subdues the enemy's troops without any fighting. He captures their cities without laying siege to them. He overthrows their kingdom without lengthy operations in the field. With his forces intact, he will dispute the mastery of the empire, and thus, without losing a man, his triumph will be complete. This is the method of attacking by stratagem. Don't just run into war. Plan it out. Plan it out so you have the upper hand. Plan it out so that you will win without losing anyone. There's some good advice here. We don't have all night, so I'll skip to the good part. Source 17. Thus we may know that there are 5 essentials for victory. He who will win, who knows when to fight and when not to fight. Shalom HaMelech. B'chol zeman v'et. There's a time for everything. Et milchama, et shalom. There's a time for war and a time for peace. Timing is everything. You don't always have to go to war. Now might not be a good time to go to war. Maran writes in the Shulchan Aruch that you don't listen to Rishaim when they make fun of you. Wicked people make fun of your behavior. Don't listen. But you shouldn't fight with them. Ki en rasha she'en lo shaar. There's always a person. Now maybe it's this person's time of success. Don't fight with them now. Wait till they're in the down, and then you will be successful. He will win who knows how to handle both superior and inferior forces. He will win whose army is animated by the same spirit throughout all its ranks. He will win who prepared himself, waits to take the enemy unprepared. He will win who has military capacity and is not interfered with by the sovereign. And lastly, says Sun Tzu, hence the saying, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. In order to go to war, you must know yourself. Not just your enemy. Knowing your enemy is important. You have to know yourself. You have to know your strengths. You have to know your weaknesses. You must be honest about those strengths and weaknesses. You must identify their strengths, their weaknesses. You will never succeed going into battle blindly. Blind means not just not knowing them. Blind means also not knowing yourself. Tonight's shiur is based on the spirit of this teaching. And I think that if I would sit with you through the writing of the Sun Tzu, though many places our Chachamim would vehemently disagree, you can find many, many places. And I don't have any proof that this book made it to our Chachamim or our Chachamim. I don't have any proof of anything. But you will find parallels because divrei emet nikarim. Things that are true are recognized as true. It doesn't have to come from any specific source to be true. This wall is blue. Today in the Jewish community, if I say, this wall is blue, what's the source of the Shulchan Aruch for that? I need a source of Shulchan Aruch that's blue. Today, you don't have to prove it. Some things are just proved. They're obvious, they're true. So, Shalom Aleichem. Turn to me to page 2. Today's the Azkarah of a very special Chacham. Rabbi Dr. Yosef José Faur. I'm putting it out there. I'm not a student of Chacham Faur. I didn't learn in the Beit Midrash of Chacham Faur. I'm a person who respects very deeply the insights and teachings, the coherence of the message that Chacham Faur brought the Sephardic Jewish community. Everything that I'm reading today comes from his book of B'Yisrael Moshe Chazan, the man in his teachings, the man in his works. I brought it for you in full here because I know that most likely you don't own the book. This book has been out of print for a very long time. So I won't be reading all this Hebrew with you, but I have it here for you so that afterwards you can go and look inside the sources yourself. Rabbi Yisrael Moshe Chazan was a very special rabbi. He's from Jerusalem originally. It's a very famous family of Jerusalem rabbis. The Chazan family in general is a very famous rabbinic dynasty all across the world. Rabbi Moshe Chazan was prolific in many things, Torah especially, but languages also. Everywhere he went, he learned the language and became a master of that language. He was a chief rabbi of Rome. He wrote a book, Azkarah Shel Romi. I think that was Rabbi Moshe Chazan. He writes a book, Iyeh Hayam. He writes a book, Kedushat Yom Tov. He finds himself in London. In London, he learns English, writes books in 2 languages. He had an incredible life. If you want to know a little bit of the controversy he had to face in his life, you can look at my United Kingdom playlist. I have a whole class on Rabbi Nissim Elnecave. Rabbi Moshe Chazan is identified by Chacham Faur as a religious humanist. Before I tell you what is a religious humanist or what is a humanist bichal, I want to talk to you about a problem. Language. Language is directly connected to culture. I'm going to be careful now when I use words. I don't want anyone to get lost. I see some eyes glazing over. Someone today asked me what is the topic of the Shiur. I said abandoning Orthodox Staticism and embracing Sephardic Dynamicism. He looked at me and said, "Can you say that in English?" But that reminds me of a story. There was once Rabbi Nissim, once a rabbi. He came to a town to speak. They announced it all. They put posters everywhere. He came to speak. Whole auditorium, 400 seats. Only one guy showed up. So he got up to speak. I once heard from a rabbi. He said, if you make an event and nobody comes, it's much better than one person coming. Because if nobody comes, you can put on your social media, 1,000 people showed up for the event. But if one person comes, then you can't. What are you going to do? One person comes to the event. So one person, he starts teaching this great Talmudic, elaborating on a passage of the Talmud. And every once in a while, this guy shakes his head. So he's arguing with me. I'm going to prove him. He starts arguing with him. No, this, that. After a while, the guy starts nodding his head. And then every few minutes, the guy shakes his head. So he argues with him again. At the end of the shiur, he had a fantastic night, this rabbi. Nobody had to come, but one Talmudic genius came to the shiur. At the end of the shiur, he comes over to the man and says, "Sir, can you please just tell me, where did you study? Which tractate are you studying right now?" I said, "Rabbi, I'm not studying anything right now." He said, what do you do for a living?" I said, "Me, I'm a farmer." I said, "For a farmer, you must have had incredible parents that taught you Torah." He said, "My parents didn't teach me anything about Torah." He said, "What do you mean the whole time you were arguing with me?" He said, "Rabbi, I didn't understand a blessed word that you said. I came here because I lost my goat yesterday. And they told me, I looked everywhere in this village and I couldn't find the goat. They said, maybe he ran to the Beit Knesset. So I came to the Beit Knesset. Happened to be you were standing up there speaking. So I said, I sat in the chair. And Rabbi, from some angles, you look like my goat." I was thinking, From other angles, you don't exactly look like my goat. He said, "Rabbi, the whole night you were speaking, I have no clue. One thing I can tell you for sure, you are definitely not my goat." I hope that it will be a little more coherent than that. Language and culture are directly connected to each other. Imagine the following. You come to America from another country. America is not a country, you know that? United States of America is a country. You come here from another country, and you're about to give a shiur, and someone says, "Hey, Rabbi, go break a leg." What do you think?
It's horrible.
I just came here, now you're cursing me already? Go break a leg? What do you go break a leg? I don't want to break a leg. Chas shalom. My mom's family, they don't even hold crutches. If they're not, maybe someone will think they're going to break a leg. But in English, go break a leg means be successful. How am I supposed to know that? That's not a translation of words. That's part of culture that is inside of those words. In every culture, it doesn't matter if it's Spanish, doesn't matter if it can even be English. I was flying to London, and I was looking at the TV screen. Comedy, one of those guys who make YouTube clips, they're going to say, "Okay, watch the movies on the plane." I put on British comedy. I don't know if it's the British, I don't know if it's me, I didn't laugh one time in the show. Clearly, whatever humor is going on over there is made for people of the British mentality. It's fine, but it wasn't funny for me. I'm sure that they might feel the other way. Some of my family members who know Hebrew but didn't grow up in Israel will come and listen to some Israeli stand-up comedy with us, and we'll be laughing on the couch. And they understand everything, but it's not funny. Because they don't understand the culture in which this is all taking place. Every language, no matter where you are in the world, has culture attached to it. Ultimately, that creates a really big problem. Number 2, there's a problem. How do I know that when I say something and you say something, we mean the same something? An example? I'm in the grocery store and I see a Christian person. They come over to wish me a happy Passover. Okay, happy Passover to you too. Now they say, Rabbi, can you give me a blessing? Sure. Many rabbis, may the Lord bless you. We spoke about this today. May the Lord bless you. Rabbi, I didn't know you believe in Jesus. Me? Well, I said the Lord. The Lord. Yeah, the Lord. You believe in Jesus. And you're going to sit there for 10 minutes trying to explain that Lord is not Jesus. And he's telling you, no, that's the Lord. And both of you are speaking at each other, but not understanding each other. The word that you use in his culture means something very different than it means in your culture.
My favorite is bless your heart for the Netherlands.
Bless your heart. That's for the South.
Yes.
Yeah, down. I guess we're in the South. No, bless your heart. It's very important when speaking to someone to define your terms. The problem is even if you try to define your terms, it's not always sure that the terms that you use to define your terms really does everyone understand it. And what ends up happening is you live in a really complicated reality that your whole life you may be communicating with people. I was once in the grocery store. I spent time in the grocery store. And this mother had her son. He must have been 6 years old. And Jimmy, Tommy, something like that. Just, Jimmy, are we communicating with each other? Screaming at him in the aisle. And I felt really bad. I mean, everyone has things with their mother, but my mother is a saint, both Hashem compared to Jimmy's mother. Judah, are we communicating? The answer is obviously no. I mean, you're screaming at his face, but he clearly has no clue what you want from him, or you wouldn't be in the situation right now. Husbands and wives, because they want to talk about Shalom Bayit. It's not we have a hard time, it's not a hard time communicating. You guys literally speak two completely different languages.
Absolutely.
Both English, but you guys don't understand each other Moshe Rabbeinu had this problem. Moshe Rabbeinu, whenever he would make peace between people, Chachamim tell us that people were worried that Moshe Rabbeinu knew their wife because he always understood their wives. How can Moshe Rabbeinu know my wife? I don't even understand my wife. Two people are saying something, but they're speaking at each other. And it ends up creating this reality of maybe I should just go live on a deserted island. Sometimes you say in the Jewish community. Some of you have learned Hilchot Pesach with me? Yeah? You had gummy bears on your matzot or something like that. So I was invited recently somewhere in New York. This lady offered me to stay in her house. She's not even in her house. Come stay in my house. But Rabbi, one request, please don't eat in my house. Listen, I'm from a Sephardic culture, warm cultures, cold cultures, I understand. You don't want to give me food, I get it, it's fine. There are restaurants in Brooklyn, it's okay. My wife says, stop being offended. Ask her why she doesn't want you to eat in her house. I said, Mrs. So-and-so, why don't you want me to eat in your house? She says, this house is a guest house, 3-bedroom guest house attached to my house. I keep it for my children when they come and visit me for Pesach. And if you eat anything in this house, it will become chametz. And I don't have the energy to kasher a 3-bedroom house every time I have guests so that it can stay kasher lePesach. So it said, please don't eat in this house. No water bottles, no fruits and vegetables, nothing. Because everything could be chametz. You see, I keep Pesach and she keeps Pesach. I follow halakha, she thinks she follows halakha. But when we say those words, we mean completely different things. And the feeling is maybe I should go live in a deserted island. I brought you an example here from the Tanakh. Yitzchak has a problem with his wife because his wife is having a problem with the wives of Esav. Very good. He says, please, I can't have any more of these women in my life. It's an original mother-in-law, daughter-in-law dilemma. And so Yaakov Avinu understands I should get a wife not from those women, but I also want to go get a wife from this family because that's important for my mother. Esav says, okay, she doesn't like my wives, let me just go get another one. And he goes to get another wife, one that his mom is going to like. Both of them heard the same directive from their parents. Two people that grew up in the same house, with the same parents, speaking the same language, and yet they completely understand the situation differently. I have twin girls, Shira and Hodaya, the light of my life. Shira and Hodaya are twins, and they cannot be more different than 2 other people live in this house. 2 completely different personalities, some of them even speak 2 completely different languages. Everything is different. How do 2 people living in the same house? Because that's the way the world is. People are different. And that makes communicating with people very complicated. Most people don't have this problem. Because most people do the following. They just seclude themselves with people that look like them, and dress like them, and talk like them, and sing like them, and eat like them. Or don't eat like them because they want to keep the house kasher Pesach. And they don't have the problem of interacting with people that are different than them. But those of us who live in a world, we look around this room, we don't all look the same, we don't all dress the same, we don't all do anything the same. And therefore, when we communicate with each other, we start to have problems. These problems become even more problematic when we start to believe that our language and our culture is the best. I have a way to raise kids. My wife, have you seen how her parents raise kids? And this is the way we're going to do it. I'm Jewish of a certain persuasion. I know the way my rabbi taught me, that's Judaism. The way your rabbi doesn't know it. And now we start to, my culture is better than your culture, and I start to judge your culture based on my culture. And this creates for a lot of conflict. Happens to be, Chacham Faur points out on page 3, source 5, that in almost every language, the word for stranger always rhymes with danger. In Hebrew, the word for a stranger is zal, zal. The word in Hebrew for something bad, tzar. Someone told me in French is the same thing, but I don't speak French. How do you say danger in French? And stranger?
Sounds the same to me.
No, this is the word, there's something subconscious in our cultures. When I see someone different than me, a lot of we get upset at racists, and racists are bad people. But to understand the motivation of why I'm afraid, I'm terrified of someone who looks different than me, who speaks differently than me, is because I don't know how to deal with somebody who's out of my little bubble. I don't know how to deal with it. You don't have to go far. Look at the Jewish community. Look at how much we like to seclude ourselves, not because it's good for us, but you don't know what to do with the world outside of us. All of us? Not all of us. But all of us in some way or another. And that brings me to humanism. Chacham Faur defines humanism as the following. Masoret humanistit, I'm on page 3, source 7, menicha, assumes, כי מתחת לשוני הבולט בין כל תרבות ושפה, מתעטפים ערכים יסודיים המשותפים לכל אדם כאדם. Humanism supposes that under every religion, every culture, every language, every nationality, are basic values that unite us as human beings. Yes, we may speak differently, we may pray differently, we may eat differently, we may want different things out of our marriage, out of our children, out of our professions, but at the end of the day, there are certain things we can all agree on that we want as human beings. When we focus on those things, we now focus less on what makes us different from each other and more on what is the same between all of us. This is a crucial tool to understanding the way our Chachamim viewed other religions and other cultures. I started this shiur quoting from a Chinese book of Sun Tzu's Art of War. I can tell you that there are many, many places in the world that if I were to start quoting Sun Tzu at the beginning of my shiur, they would ask me to leave. You know what I'm talking about? Somebody once tried to quote Aristotle somewhere. Yeah, you might.
Who do you think you are, the Rambam?
Exactly, no, mamash like this.
I wish he said that.
Harav Kapach, Rabbi Yosef Kafich. Once he got in a taxi, I heard the story from his granddaughter. If I don't get to the source sheet, I don't care. I'm just enjoying to be here with you guys. Rabbi Yosef Kapach got into the taxi, and the Arab taxi driver, he was listening to the Quran being read. And the Quran has a tune, follows similar makamim to some Sephardic traditions. So the driver, when realizing it was the rabbi, he picked up, I'm sorry, he turned off the radio. And Nat Kapach says that her grandfather leaned forward and put the radio back on. He said, what do you mean? That's my favorite part. And started to sing the Quran together with the taxi driver. Now, what kind of rabbi knows Quran? The same kind of rabbi who knows the New Testament. There's a commentary in the Torah, Rabbi Eliyahu ben Amozeh, some of the greatest Sephardic Chachamim who lived in Italy, Livorno, Italy, Leghorn. His commentary in the Torah has been unpublished for many, many, many years, and recently started being published again with very unhelpful footnotes that intend to make him look bad. I know that's not how they present it, but that's how I present it. It's not. Some of it may be on Sephardi, yes. Rabbi Eliyahu ben Amozeh, every once in a while, quotes from Midrash Matitya. You know the Midrash Matitya? So you know Midrash Rabbah, I'm sure. You know, Midrash is the book of Matthew, the Gospels. Now, when studying the Torah, it's really important, according to Rabbi Eliyahu ben Amozeh, to understand it within the context of the whole world that studies scriptures. It shouldn't surprise you then that in Syria they burned his books. In Jerusalem they banned his books. And in his life, you know who stood up for him? Two very moderate, open-minded, liberal Sephardic rabbis stood up for him. No, this is a long time before that. One's name was Rabbi Chaim Palaji of Turkey, and one was Rabbi Yosef Chaim of Baghdad, the Ben Ish Chaim. And they put their kosher symbol on Rabbi Eliyahu ben Amozeh as radical Kabbalists. I need you to understand this. Because they also, whether you recognize it or not, are part of a Sephardic religious humanistic tradition that sees in all wisdoms and in all people and in all nations something that we can learn from. In fact, this comes straight from the words of our Chachamim. Torah bagoyim al ta'amim. If you see Torah, you want to know how to study a verse in the Torah, don't call the Pope in Rome. That's not the right address. Chokhmah bagoyim, you want to learn wisdom? Ta'amim. What, we have a monopoly on wisdom? When we say Jewish people, we brought to the world ethics and morals, we're racist. We brought ethics and morals to the world. There are other ethical and moral people in this world. We only have a monopoly, according to our Chachamim, on a divine relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, which we then profess to teach to the whole world. So it's not for us, but it was taught to us to share with the world. But everything else, all of the wisdoms of the world, those are for us equally to learn with the rest of humanity. Rabbi Yitzchak Abar Benin, his commentary in the Torah is bothered why Moshe Rabbeinu got stuck on Mount Sinai for 40 days. What was he doing up there for so long? What do they tell us? What is he doing there 40 days, 40 minutes? He was learning Torah, yeah? Rabbi Yitzchak Abar Benin says there are 40 wisdoms. They call them secular studies today in school. 40 wisdoms that a person must know in order to properly understand the Torah. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught Moshe Rabbeinu one of those wisdoms every single day that he was on Mount Sinai. And only after that was he able to receive the Torah and bring it to the Jewish people. Even our Torah is built on a premise that humanity has what to share with each other. And that brings me to the top left of page 3. I promised you about warfare. In war, there are two methods. Dynamic warfare and static warfare. Baruch atah Adonai. Eloheinu melech haolam, she'akol nהיה b'o. Static warfare. Al pi hashita hastatit. That's not a Hebrew word. Yeah? Based on the static approach. יש ליצור מסגרת המונעת כל מגע עם האויב. It's the job of the army to make sure we make a border that saves us from any contact with the enemy. הלוחם מתחבא. The soldiers, they hide in trenches, behind trees, however they hide. They wear uniforms that camouflage. תקוותו שהאויב לא יפרוץ אליו. The hope is the enemy won't find him. ואם יפרוץ שיעלה בידו להדפו ולסלקו לחוץ. And if he does invade, I will be able to get him out. על המנהיגים, לבנות חומות. The leaders of the community are responsible for building walls around the community. כדי לשמור ולהבטיח שהאויב לא יפרוץ. To make sure that the enemies cannot infiltrate into our communities. אומנם כאשר פורץ האויב, but when the enemy finally infiltrates our cities, אז ידו על העליונה. Who is in an advantage? The enemy. Because we only built walls to protect ourselves from the enemy. Actually, how to fight the enemy, we don't know. So we build the walls, but if our walls are breached, we're in big trouble. החומות שבשיטה הסטטית הן פעמים חומריות, פעמים רוחניות, או חומריות ורוחניות כאחד, הכל לפי צורך השעה ומטרות הלחימה. Sometimes these wars are physical, sometimes they're spiritual, sometimes they're both, depends on the war you're fighting. על פי שיטה זו חובה על מנהיגי הדור וחכמיו לבנות חומות סביב העם, וכל המרבה בעוביין ובגובהן הרי זה משובח. The job of the leaders of the generation, let's talk about rabbis, is to build walls, protective barriers around the Jewish community. And the thicker you can make those barriers, the taller you can make them, the greater of a rabbi you are. Static warfare. We don't fight enemies face to face. We simply protect ourselves from any type of conflict in the first place. Dynamic warriors. Here's how a dynamic warrior operates. Source 10. על פי השיטה הדינמית אין חומות. In dynamic warfare there are no walls. ואם הן קיימות, תפקידן, it's a typo when I was typing it up, אינו למנוע מפגש ישיר עם האויב אלא להביא את האויב למצב שידו תהיה לתחתונה. When there are walls, the walls are not there to keep us away from the enemy. It's there to deceive the enemy into thinking that we're hiding behind walls. בלחימה דינמית עליך לנצל את נקודת התורפה של האויב, להשתמש בכוחו ולהפוך את הקערה על פיה. The point of war and dynamic warfare is to identify the weakness of the enemy, to use that weakness of the enemy against the enemy in order to defeat him. לפי השקפה זו, according to this mentality, על מנהיגי הדור וחכמיה לדעת יפה את היתרונות ואת החסרונות של עצמם ושל האויב. In order to fight this type of warfare, the job of the leaders of the generation are to know hetev very well the strengths and weaknesses of the enemy and of themselves. And now, I want to share with you a biblical precedent. I would love to sit here and read to you the whole chapter of Tanakh. I added it in the back in very small letters in case you want it for yourself. This story is a crucial story. David HaMelech comes out to battle. I really wish I could read this to you from the Tanakh, but I'm going to paraphrase for you. David HaMelech hears that the Jewish army is up against Goliath. Now you should know in the Tanakh there are two narratives of Goliath. Two different people kill Goliath. Do you know what I'm talking about? Goliath is killed by David, and Goliath is killed by Elchanan, my firstborn son. That leads some Chachamim to say that David and Elchanan are the same person. Some people say they're two different Goliaths that happen to be attacking the Jewish people. I'm not here to talk to you about who the Goliaths were. There's Goliath the Pelishti. The way that our Torah tells us about him, he's a big man. He's a giant. He's wearing armor from head to toe. Very scary armor. Just the sight of him intimidates all of the soldiers in the battlefield. So we are at war, the Jewish kingdom, led by King Shaul, against Goliath. I have to tell you, I once took a group of Christian missionaries on a tour of the old city of Jerusalem. That's also a crime in Israel. I didn't do that. I took them on a walk of the old city of Jerusalem. German Christian missionaries. How that happened, a story for another time. We come to a wall in the ground that is older than the Kotel. This wall was built by Chizkiyahu HaMelech. You might know, I lived on that wall for a while. Chizkiyahu HaMelech and Yeshayahu, you remember when Assyria is attacking the Jewish kingdom, Sancherib. We build a wall very rapidly. The prophet complains that we destroyed people's houses along the way. You can see the houses that are destroyed. And I asked these missionaries, who was King Chizkiyahu? And they answered the question. And who was the prophet in the generation of Chizkiyahu? You know, Christians. We thought you'd never ask about Isaiah. It wasn't a week later, I had to walk around a group of American yeshiva guys. What do you mean yeshiva guys? These are guys that are so busy learning Torah, their parents send them all the way to Israel to study Torah. In the Batei Midrash of Ben Yehuda, and in the Batei Midrash on the beach in Ashkelon, and whatever else they're doing over there. Very serious yeshiva guys, they look more religious than me. And these guys, I took them on a tour. We come to the wall. Chevron, who is King Chizkiyahu? I see the mind. We know King David. We know King Shlomo. Who else? I don't know who else. Okay, who was the prophet in the time of... Can you tell me about Yeshayahu in a war with Assyria? And then I said, Boshti v'nichram. How much Torah can you study without actually knowing the Torah? I'm reading a book now from a Christian missionary, Andrew Bonar. He's from the Church of Scotland. In 1839, he was sent out to travel around the Jewish community, and it described what the Jewish community looked like to the people of Scotland. He happens to enter a synagogue. I don't want to tell you where, you can just use your imagination. He describes being so excited to come to the synagogue. He comes inside. The scene is very pitiful, by the way. He says there are 3 old Jewish men there with big, long beards, very white beards. And he says that one of them was blind and 2 of them were deaf. But they were all excited to speak with him. Now, wherever this Andrew Bonar went, the Jewish people would come speak with him. The reason being, why would someone want to speak to a Christian missionary? Because they had visited Yerushalayim. And all the Jewish people, no matter which country he went to, wanted to hear about Yerushalayim. What does it look like? Are there still walls there? Is there a temple? Is it destroyed? Can you see where it's destroyed? They want to know everything. They just loved Eretz Israel. Today's reality of Jews who don't love Eretz Israel, it's a weird reality. It's not the original Jewish mentality. And so he comes to synagogue and he wants to discuss with them Tanakh, and he knows Hebrew, this Andrew Bonar. At least he knows how to read. In one of the editions of his book, he says he went to the Jews and they do kaparot on Erev Yom Kippurim. Don't get upset. I'll just tell you what he says. Yeah? And he says, what do they say? Zeh Khalifati. Zeh Timurati, my atonement, my replacement. Instead, it says there, Zeh Chamorati. Because they're chet and ataf, they kind of look the same. This is my donkey. So this Andrew Bonar, he says he came to argue scripture with them, and he asked if they have a Tanakh, and he said they showed him a whole wall of Talmuds, and not one complete volume of Tanakh, just fragments. How embarrassing is it? We can give classes on Mesilat Yesharim, on the Ramban, on Or Chaim HaKadosh, on Shulchan Aruch, whatever you want to teach. But basic books that were written by Kadosh Baruch Hu or by the prophets who said, it doesn't say there, this Rebbe told me that. It says, these are the words of Adonai Tzevaot spoke to me. Literally what God said, and those books we don't read. In the Tanakh, the Goliath is standing in the battlefield. And the Jewish army is scared. Under the leadership of Shaul is no slouch. And one guy shows up, and he's not a warrior. He shows up in the battlefield. He says, "God, what's the commotion over here?" So you see that man? We're all afraid of him. David HaMelech says, "You're afraid of him? Let me fight him." They look, he's a little boy. David HaMelech is a young man. And more than he's a young man, the Navi is telling us just how beautiful he looked. He was a very good-looking young man. Was very refined and polished in the way he dressed and appeared. David HaMelech always liked beautiful things. You should know there's a thing about David HaMelech. David HaMelech says, "Don't worry, I can handle this." So they go to tell Shaul HaMelech, he wants to fight Goliath. He says, Mabul, break your head, what do you want? Fine. So he says, but listen, send him my armor, because that kid, he's not going to survive half a second in battle with him. Shaul HaMelech sends his armor to David HaMelech and his sword. David HaMelech takes it. He tries it on. His armor is not so comfortable. David HaMelech is used to nice clothing. Yeah. He tries it. He doesn't like it. He says, "I don't want this." He takes it off, puts it on the ground. Say, "I'll get the sword." "No, I don't need a sword." David HaMelech looks at the ground and he takes a few stones. The Navi makes sure to tell us they're very beautiful stones. Nice polished stones. They're very pretty stones. And then he puts them in his pouch. And he picks up a stick. You guys familiar with this story? David HaMelech comes with the stick, and Goliath is looking at him. And David HaMelech doesn't wait for Goliath to do it. He charges at Goliath. Now Goliath is a huge giant. You see a little kid charging at you with a stick. And Goliath says, "What am I, a dog? You think you're going to come hit me with a stick?" And David HaMelech says, "I'm coming to attack you, and once I defeat you, everybody will know that Adonai, the God of Israel, is the master of war." Even the Jews are getting nervous now. I mean, he's really emotional. A great speech, David, but we'll do your Kaddish for you for the next year. It's okay. David HaMelech charges at Goliath. He's armed. He's wearing armor. You're carrying a stick. Charges at him. And Goliath runs at him too. Lifts his sword. David HaMelech drops his stick. Because he wasn't really going to hit him with a stick. That's not the point. The stick is the fake wall that I made you to deceive you. And he reaches into his pouch. He pulls out a slingshot. He takes one of those beautiful pebbles that he found. And sees that Goliath is covered from head to toe except for his forehead. We can go with forehead, it's okay. And he slingshots directly into Goliath's forehead, and Goliath, boom, falls down on the ground. Great story. When I tell my children the story, they like it. A little bit violent, rated PG-13. But David HaMelech sees Goliath laying on the ground. He pretended to use a stick, but he didn't. He used a slingshot. The slingshot didn't kill Goliath. He's laying on the ground. And David HaMelech runs and jumps on top of Goliath. So now you have little David, nice clothing, standing on top of Goliath. He reaches down, takes Goliath's sword, and decapitates him. Takes off his head. He takes his head, goes to Shaul HaMelech, famous conversation there with Shaul HaMelech. That's when Yonatan, literally the next verse, Yonatan sees David and he loves him. And David HaMelech returns to Jerusalem with the head of Goliath. Great story. Let me tell you how to read the story properly. David HaMelech is a dynamic warrior, not a static warrior. He doesn't wear armor. You know who wears armor? Weak soldiers wear armor. I need to protect myself. You should protect yourself. David HaMelech picks up a stick. Why? Because if Goliath thinks I'm fighting a guy with a stick, he's not coming at him with everything he's got. He comes at him like a kid who has a stick. The moment who charges the battle? David or Goliath? David. A Jewish warrior never waits for someone to attack him first. I attack you first. At the moment where you're thinking that I can be defeated. He attacks him, drops the stick, picks up his slingshot. What is a slingshot? It's a real weapon. A slingshot, he doesn't need a real weapon. He doesn't need a machine gun. He needs to figure out where is the one vulnerable spot in my enemy and to use it against my enemy. And once he uses that against his enemy and knocks him to the ground, there is poetic value to David HaMelech reaching down, picking up the sword of Goliath, and killing him with his own weapon. Once had a Sephardic Chacham from Jerusalem write me a letter, a certain group of people making my life miserable. And at the end of the blessing, Sephardic rabbis, they're a little bit, they get excited. Yeah? He wrote at the end of the letter, Charbam tavo belibam, vatal bamotem motidroch. Their sword should kill their own hearts, and you should stand them. So relax. I say with the dying, okay? I was complaining. I was venting about it. Something happened. Don't have to wish. But what was the curse? The curse was that their own sword should kill them. This, my friends, is the example of dynamic warfare. David HaMelech didn't invent it. If you look at the next page, David HaMelech learned this from Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu sent spies to the land of Israel. And the spies go to Eretz Yisrael and they come back terrified. What do they see there? Walls. What kind of walls? Big walls. Lev HaShamayim. Like the mechitza in my wedding when I got married in Bell's wedding hall. Mechitza Lev HaShamayim. I didn't even know I got married. I was lucky they didn't put a mechitza under the chuppah. Yeah? Huge walls. They come back, we're terrified. We're terrified. Look what Moshe Rabbeinu says. Source 12. Minayin atem yodim kocham. How do you know how strong these people are? If they're hiding behind walls, then they're weak soldiers. You should go to war saying, if there are giants hiding behind walls, that's because they're really not so strong. What Moshe Rabbeinu sees as a dynamic warrior, and what his spies see as static warriors, they're both seeing the same thing, but they're not communicating in the same language. They don't know how to deal with the problem the same way. Moshe Rabbeinu's attitude, I see their walls, I know they're weak, let's take them head on. The spies, they see the walls and they run for their lives. This is the same exact thing that David HaMelech identified on the battle with Goliath. And this now brings us, because I know what time it is.
7.
There's a clock right behind your head. This brings us back to where I wanted to begin.
10 more minutes.
There were times that Jewish communities lived behind walls, but unintentionally. In the older years of Am Yisrael, we lived alone in Eretz Yisrael. For the most part, there weren't that many non-Jewish people to interact with. And if there were, they were minor. Our culture was the dominant culture. We begin to have problems when we enter a physical exile. We find ourselves in other countries. Arabic countries, Muslim countries, Christian countries. And all of a sudden, our people are coming in direct contact day to day with the language of another culture, with religious values of another culture. Think about how much you know about the holiday of Christmas. What, you don't celebrate? Maybe you do. Think about how much you know about it. But you never went to church on Christmas. You just know about it. Why? Because you live in America. You probably could sing half the songs. I know they were written by Jews too, but you could probably sing half the songs because you shop at Macy's too much. Think about a random Israeli kid. My cousin, a young girl, she got a doll from school. They were handing out dolls. She's not a religiously observant child. Went to regular public school in Israel. They were handing out Santa Clauses for Hanukkah. And the Santa Claus, what is it? You pull the string, jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. She was a great son. She doesn't understand a word of it. She's like 5, but she understands it. Great doll. The teacher also didn't know what this doll was. She gets in the car with her mom, who lived for a little bit in Brooklyn. Says, "Ma, what's going on? My school's giving out Santa Claus?" But the teacher had no idea what's going on. And they say one somebody from the Misad Chinuch, the Israeli Department of Education. He came to check out one of the Israeli schools. So he comes to the school and he turns to the class. His class, who broke the tablets, the 10 Commandments? And one little kid, David, says, "No, it wasn't me. It wasn't me." He says, "Come on, it wasn't you." He goes to the teacher and he says, "Teacher, I asked the class, this is Tanakh class, I asked the class who broke the tablets." He said, "It wasn't him." He says, David's a good kid. He says he didn't break the tablets, what do you want? So they go to the principal's office, and the superintendent said, "Listen, I came here, I'm asking a question. David says he didn't break the tablets, the teacher says David didn't break the tablets, so what's going on here?" The superintendent says, "I don't really teach in the classrooms, I don't know David, but I know the teacher. If he says David didn't break the tablets, he definitely didn't break the tablets." So something people don't know. You're not in a culture that absorbs certain ideas. The moment our cultures began to interact with other cultures is the moment where static chachamim and dynamic chachamim were invented. And static chachamim believe we're going to put up walls. And those walls are going to protect us, and for the most part, they do protect us. Except for when we must interact. In almost every interaction, we will have the lower hand. Because we're not prepared for this. We're not ready for this. The chachamim who chose to wage dynamic warfare never built walls. They did not protect their communities externally from the threat of outside cultures. They protected them internally. Let's study a little bit about Sun Tzu. Let's read some Quran together and explain to you why we don't believe in that. Let's study a little bit of the New Testament. How could you be Jewish and not know the New Testament? Okay, if you could be Jewish and not know the Tanakh, I'm sure you can be. I know how it works. I get it. Yeah. There are priorities. So before you go buy a New Testament, finish the Tanakh first. Yeah. Have to be careful what I suggest. An example of this, the Dugmat Mofet, is with Sephardic music, especially of Spain. What they call the golden era of Spain, but anybody who studied that era knows it wasn't so golden. And this is my summary of the Shiur. Has anyone here studied the book of Kuzari? Yeah? Now, the book of Kuzari in modern Jewish circles has a very bad reputation. But it's always a good thing to ignore in modern Jewish circles. The book of the Kuzari is an indispensable work that teaches us some of the most foundational things about our faith. There's also an attempt to try to everything in the Kuzari, to clash it with the Rambam, which is also not entirely accurate. It's a mentality, it exists. That's the approach, it's not our approach. In the Kuzari, this king of Khuzar has a dream. And he wants to get close to the Creator, and the Creator tells him, "Listen, your actions are not good. Your desire to get close to me is good. But your actions, your paganism, it's not good. Go find the true faith." And he looks, and he seeks out the Muslims and the Christians, the Jews, the Greek philosophers, all kinds of people. He ends up reaching out to a Muslim scholar. According to the Muslims, why is the Quran divine? At least according to the Kuzari. What is the proof of divinity of the Quran? I have a whole room of Jewish people.
The universal success.
Of that. So then Christianity should also be divine according to the Muslims. It's pretty much 50-50.
The sword. You don't accept you can.
Okay, that's a good marketing method, but not could be for that too.
By Muhammad, the prophet.
Right. What's so special about it? According to the Muslims, it wasn't written by Muhammad.
There was an angel communicated.
Their answer is as follows: anyone who reads the Quran, I have a few editions of the Quran. Anyone who reads the Quran cannot help but recognize that such beautiful Arabic could only have been given to us by the Creator, for no human being could write such beautiful Arabic.
Marbles say the same.
Huh?
Marbles say the same. Just read the book.
Did
of
I say that?
Marble,
You say that or they say that?
According to the Kuzari, that's what the Muslims say.
No, I agree, that's what they say.
Now the king of Khuzar doesn't like this because he doesn't speak Arabic. So how is he supposed to judge the value of something if he doesn't have the tools to judge it? He doesn't like it, throws the Muslim guy out. But this is very important to understand Islamic culture. The language of Arabic, it's not a regular language. It's a language, especially in that time and that place, it was the most sophisticated language. There was a language of philosophers, of scientists, of mathematicians. A Jewish community that ignores Arabic is an illiterate Jewish community. Yet a Jewish community that speaks Arabic is going to absorb in it ideas that are not Jewish. The Chachamim had to figure out what to do very quickly. Do we let people speak Arabic and therefore absorb Arabic culture? Do we ban them from this and cause them to live in their shells and, listen carefully, be depressed their whole life because they're disconnected from the rest of humanity? Our Chachamim said we have a better solution. Why do I have to choose? Let them be involved in this culture, but let us do magic that Chachamim do, not real magic. Let's do Chachamim. We're going to use their culture against them. You ever listen to Israeli Mizrahi music, it's called? I'm not talking about Sephardic. You know what I mean? Like, without the pedophile. You know, like the okay, but the genre. You know the genre? No, not like that. Dubai. I don't know, I can sing for you now. Okay, but you listen to a song. I don't know. I'm afraid of the guys who make the YouTube clips.
Oh.
Great music. It's great music, but the words. Yalla moti lech habayta, shalom v'toda. Im titקשר אליי. Come on. That's it. Great music, great rhythm. Let's dance all over town. What are you singing? The content is absent. The music, incredible. It's why the people who enjoy the music the most are those who don't really speak Hebrew. Because it's really exciting. When you start to understand the Hebrew, you feel your brain cells dying. It's not my agenda against Mizrahi music. It's simply sharing. Rabbi Avraham ben Ezra, Rabbi Moshe ben Ezra, Rabbi Shimon ibn Gabiro, they identified the same problem in Arabic. Arabic music is all about makamat. It's all about the rhyming and the tune, and it's about the weight. I don't know how to explain that in English properly,
Symmetry.
but the weight, the symmetry of the words themselves are not so important. Says Rabbi Avraham ben Ezra, Rabbi Yonatan Halevy, let's write Arabic music with Hebrew words. Let's use their culture to show them just how beautiful Hebrew is and how much content our Torah has. And just like that, it would be the equivalent of the greatest rabbi you can think of walking into the Beit Knesset and saying, I just composed a piyut in honor of the Brit Milah of Rabbi Yitzhak Berdugo to the tune of Taylor Swift. And everybody's saying, Chazak u'Baruch, Rabbi. I know what time. I have 2 more minutes. Why did our rabbis work like that? Because they were dynamic warriors and because they were humanists. In their tradition, there is nothing wrong with learning and absorbing from other people and other cultures, as long as it doesn't take away from yours. And the best way to win a war is if you're standing on top of that giant, not hiding from him, and you use his own sword to cut off his own head. Because people who hide behind walls are very weak people. And people who are trained in hand-to-hand combat, face-to-face interaction with the people that we're so scared of, can do 2 things. Not only can they solve the problems inside of the Jewish community, but they can serve it as inspiration on what we as human beings all have in common. And I think that if you look at the writings in our Chachamim, it doesn't matter which country they come from. It doesn't matter where they go, it doesn't matter what they wrote. I know today people like to break up our Chachamim into there are these groups and those groups and the rationalists and that. It's all, in my opinion, shtuyot. The underlying assumption that all of them work with is that everybody in the world has what to teach us. We are not afraid of anybody. Perhaps, in the words of my rabbi, Mori Harav Yaakov Peretz, HaTorah lo mefachedet mimcha. The Torah is not scared of your culture. The Torah is not scared of your religion. Don't try to protect something that doesn't need protection. We are a strong people. We've been around for so long precisely because we refused to hide behind walls. The attitude of our Chachamim is one of dynamic warfare. My opinion is that the only solution going forward inside of the Jewish community and outside of the Jewish community, our only hope at uniting ourselves as human beings with the non-Jewish public, is to embrace everything good that exists in the world and to use those good things also for our advantage, to bolster the Torah, to support the Torah, not to be afraid of it. This tradition has the ability to change the whole world, because one cannot win a war if they don't know their enemy and if they don't know themselves. B'ezrat Hashem Yitbarach, I ask you, it's not my only time here. I hope I come back to Florida again soon. We have Shiurim, B'ezrat Hashem, on the internet. My wife is an even better person to listen to. Kevin, thank you for learning with me tonight. And I hope that when you learn with me, you learn with other Chachamim, to identify and think about everything you've learned until today. What are static warriors? Who are the dynamic warriors? And then all of the pieces will start to fall into place. Bezrat Hashem Yitbarach, we should be guided in the path of dynamic warfare until the point where we've made peace with the whole world and we can fulfill the words of our prophets which say, Lo yisa goy el goy chere v'lo yilmedu od milchama. We won't need to go to war against each other because we're all speaking the same language. Because we all understand each other's cultures, not because we force people to change. We won't need those swords because we're all at peace. V'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד.